Hi folks. In this session we're going to be talking about our trust accounting module. This is actually the first module that Morningstar Technology ever developed for law firms, and it has certainly evolved over the years. We'll go into Data and Control File and click on the Trust tab. You have the option of interfacing trust to the general ledger. This is strictly a firm choice, or a choice among the firm and maybe the CPA firm. If you do interface to the general ledger, it duplicates all the receipts and disbursements over in the general ledger. And I think by law, the bar that you report to really doesn't care either way, but you need to check with the auditors and make sure that it's okay not to interface. Your check style can be one of several different check styles, with a middle check or top check. It really doesn't matter. It just depends on the form stock you have. We specify that you need to select your default bank account. You can have as many bank accounts as you want, but you need to pick one as the predominant bank account. And then you just tell it okay. And if we look in trust and in file maintenance, we have three choices. We can set up bank accounts, and in our case we have two, and the code can be anything you want it to be, but it needs to be something that you can easily remember. And then you have purpose codes, which are reasons for receiving and dispersing money in and out of trust, such as attorney fees, client retainers, real estate closing reasons, settlements, like in contingency cases. You just set up your own code and give it a description. And then you have your payees. And the payees are shared with our accounts payable module, so that you only have to enter a payee code once, and you can disperse out of the trust account to the same payee or out of the operating account. You just set up a code that you can remember. There again, we'll use something like clerk of court. You just have clerk. You specify the check format, how you want the name and address printed on the checks, and whether or not, in the trust case, you need to track a 1099 on that particular vendor. So you set up all of your vendors, and then you set up your cases. And if you're already using our time accounting and billing system, the cases would already be there. So you can set up your cases, and then you receipt and disperse. Receiving and dispersing is the primary thing, obviously, you're doing in trust. You're either taking money in and putting it in someone's account, or you're dispersing money out of someone's account. And you can look and see what's in an account at any given time. You print your checks, you post them, and you do some reporting. So we'll go into receipts and disbursements. I already have a receipt keyed in here for $10,000 to this particular file for a client retainer advance. So we'll say we took that money in, and we're going to disperse out of that same file. And as opposed to a manual check, we'll say it's a regular check, which means we want the computer to print it. And it assigns it a fictitious or temporary check number until we get ready to print the checks. We'll give it a date, the bank it's coming out of, the amount, and then we will select a payee code. So it pulls up the name and address like it will appear on the check, and then we'll select one of our purpose codes, which in this case it's going to be for a filing fee. So we've got a deposit in, we've got one or more disbursements keyed, and we'll go to print checks. We select the ones that we want to key. We will give it the date of the check as we want it printed. Whether or not we print the file number or the client's name on the check is not mandatory. In some states, the bar auditors preferred that the file number or the client's name or both actually be on the face of the check. And we will give it their starting check number and tell it to assign check numbers. And it tells us how many we need to have in the printer. So we tell it we're ready to go, and the particular check format that we're using in this particular case is a top stub showing the client's file that the money is coming out of, where the money is going, and why. And then the face of the check itself with the dollar spelled out, and then a bottom stub. So you're going to retain a stub and send the check and a stub to the payee. So we'll finish our check printing process. It wants to know if we want to print a check register. It reminds us to post the checks. So we tell it we understand. We go ahead and select the deposit and the check to post simultaneously and tell it to update. Records are going to be posted to the permanent file. That's what we want to do. So we've posted our work, and at any given time we can go in and inquire as to what's on a file. We just select the file, we select the particular bank account that we know that client's money is in. So we have $12,400 balance in that account. And if we look down here, we see the $10,000 client retainer advance that came in. We see the check to the clerk of court for filing fees. So you can always come into activity inquiry, and you can pick any account, and you can see the activity in the account and the balance in the account without having to print a particular report. As far as reports, we go into the report master and go into trust/ledger, and all of the trust accounting products or reports are on the left-hand side. Several of them are just listings, like the bank account list, vendor list, the check print we just saw. You have the ability to reprint a check in a check register. You have the ability to print a client balance report. So we'll specify that this report is as of 03/31/13. You can do one or all files. You can select a specific bank account. You can tell it to include zero balances if you like, if you want to see all of the files. And you can either order it alphabetically or numerically. So we'll see the client balance report shows us that we have $40,595 sitting in our trust account, and how much of it belongs to each one of these files, and who the responsible timekeeper is on the file, when it was last active, and how long it's been sitting in the trust account with no activity. Then you have the ability to print an individual account ledger. You can tell it the oldest date you want to see through the most recent date that you would like to see, and whether you want all files, one file, whether or not you want zero balances. And it will bring you up an individual ledger that you can actually send to the client if they requested one, and it will show all of the detailed activity in the file and the balance sitting on the file at the present time. There are other reports in the system. You can do a subsidiary ledger, which shows everything that came in and out of the bank account for a particular period. You can also do a miscellaneous transaction report. For any file, for any date range, any bank, you can print all checks, all transfers, all receipts, just any type of transaction that you want, and you can order it in several different ways. If you find that on occasion you disperse money out of the wrong account, you can either void that check and disperse it properly, or you can go to year-to-date corrections. Let's say in this case it was a deposit, and we simply put money in the wrong account. All we've got to do is come into year-to-date corrections and go to our list box and locate the deposit. We'll take this one right here, and all you've got to do is change the file number to what you know the file should have been, and then save it up top. And that simply moves that money from one file to the other file. Every several years, we recommend that you purge your trust records. And to do that, you can come into here and look at the File Purge Utilities, and you'll notice Trust right here. This work, if you've got a lot of transactions in and out of trust, the volume builds up over time, and you need to clear out some of the historical records. If you've got it reduced to hard copy, and you enter a date like 12/31/2011, it will purge all receipts and disbursements on every file that has arrived at a zero balance up through and including that date. It will not touch a file that has not come to a zero balance or anything more recent than the date that you specify. We do recommend that you do that on occasion. You will have to find yourself, obviously, voiding a check from time to time, so you can come into Trust, Periodic Processing, and Voids. All you do is tell it you understand. You come up to the list box and locate the check that you want to void. Let's say we need to void this check that just went out to the clerk of court, and we want to void it as of 03/31/13, and just tell it to void it. And it posted it, and it tells us we were not integrated to the general ledger. So if we go back into that file that we just voided the check out of and tell it we want to see the balance in it again, then it's up by $100 because we've got the 100 coming out, and it knows that it's been voided. So now we've got the 100 going back in. So whether you void a check or a deposit, it adjusts the file accordingly. If you're interfaced to the general ledger, it adjusts the general ledger accordingly. A void could also be used in the case of an NSF. If you're notified that a check is lost or it's being returned for insufficient funds, you could void it in that case. We hope this will help you better understand what trust can do for you. You know, being audited by any bar is a bit unsettling situation, but as long as you can account for the money that's actually in the bank, and as long as you know you've tied back to your bank reconciliation and can show the auditors the total in the bank and who owns that money, then you should pass the audit with flying colors. If we can help you, please call Morningstar Technology and Caseload at 864-346-4486. Thank you.